Mark Schlabach. First had news of this about an hour ago, and Mark joins us now. Mark Schlabach from ESPN. Mark, thank you very, very much. Always great to talk to you. So what do we know at this hour, and how did Alabama land on Kalen DeBoer?
Paul, I think he's the guy they zeroed in on from the beginning. I think once it was clear that, Nick's top proteges like Kirby Smart or Steve Sarkisian weren't going to make a move, that it came down to Norvell and Kalen DeBoer, and they met with Kalen DeBoer earlier today, hammered out the details. I know that Washington made a really strong push to try to keep him, a contract north of $9 million, more than doubling what he was making this year. I think he's told Washington officials he's taking the Alabama job. He's supposed to meet with his players here in a couple hours in Seattle. Would assume he's introduced as Alabama's coach here in the next couple of days. But yeah, the deal is done.
It was interesting because for a while Alabama fans were getting very jittery because one after another, starting with Lanning, and then we saw Sarkisian, and today Norvell. One person told me that they really liked Norvell, and then some things started popping up on his radar screen. You said they zeroed in on DeBoer early on, but how did all these other guys manufacture new deals if that was the case?
They have a very crafty agent, Paul. And at some point these schools are going to figure it out. But no, I mean, look, it was going to take a different kind of guy and a confident guy to step into that job. I mean, it's like I wrote, it's the best job in college football, one of the best jobs in college football. But right now it's the hardest job in college football because you're replacing the greatest of all time. And if you're Steve Sarkisian and you just took Texas to the college football playoff and you're in Austin and you're at a hot recruiting hotbed like the state of Texas, why would you leave to go replace Nick Saban and then try to fill those shoes? Same thing for, Kirby Smart at Georgia, who won 2 national championships. So those guys were going to be eliminated. I know a lot of people in Tuscaloosa wanted Alabama to hire Lane Kiffin, but that was never going to happen with the way it ended the last time. I love Lane, but he was fired the Monday before a national championship game.
Hold on a second, Mark. Let me ask you about that, because I've heard a lot of people from Alabama say similar things, and Lane tweets all this stuff, but he was fired in 2016. There's no doubt Lane Kiffin is a different person today. Why wasn't he considered?
I think it's for the reason I just told you. Look, I like Lane. I do think.
Mark, whether you like him or not is irrelevant. But my point again is he was fired 7 years ago, and I think he's put up a pretty good track record at Ole Miss. I'm just trying to understand. I'm not blaming you. You're not making the decision. I'm just trying to get a better clarification on why something that happened 6 years ago or 7 years ago is still a factor today.
He was fired the Monday before a national championship game.
No, but Mark, I remember that. I'm just trying to understand a little more context.
I mean, just think about it. I mean, you're getting ready to play for a national championship. You're not at work when you're supposed to be, and then they're forced to bring in Steve Sarkisian off the bench.
Okay.
I mean, that's just,
you're saying that doomed Lane Kiffin, even though many people believe when Lane turned down Auburn last year, he would eventually replace Nick Saban. Those people were obviously not talking to Greg Byrne, though.
Right. Nah, I mean, look, I've been listening to your show, waiting in the carpool line to pick my son up from high school, and people just got to give DeBoer a chance. I mean, I've been wrong before, certainly, about whether or not a guy is going to succeed at a place, but I get that he's not from the South. He's from South Dakota, but he's not from the SEC. He hasn't coached in the SEC, but the guy's a hell of a football coach. He's been a head coach for 9 years. He's lost 12 games. I know a lot of that was it at the NAIA level, but tremendous football coach, tremendous offensive mind. I think it's going to be interesting to see whether or not he brings Ryan Grubb, his offensive coordinator, with him, or if Washington tries to keep Grubb and makes him the head coach. He's going to have to get some recruiters. He'll have to get a good defensive coordinator. But I mean, there's no guarantee. But there's no guarantee if Kirby Smart steps in there that he equals what Nick Saban did. I mean, there's only one guy who's done that. So it's going to be tough for anybody. But I think DeBoer, I think he's got a pretty good chance.
Good deal, Mark. Thank you very, very much. Mark Schlabach joining us, talking about the hiring of DeBoer. And I want to go back to something that Mark said a minute ago about the firing of Lane Kiffin. That was well documented. It's also important to remember that Alabama lost that game that next Monday night against Clemson. Had somehow Lane Kiffin remained there for that game, Lane Kiffin and others were convinced they would have won the game. Came down to the final play of the game. So Nick Saban very well may have had 8 national championships had he not fired Lane Kiffin, which apparently is according to Schlabach, is the reason that Lane Kiffin is not being hired today.
Give me something. Light a cigarette just so I can breathe.